Testing, testing, one, two, three. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Owoh's Corner, my own little corner of art. And in today's stream, I'm actually going to be working on my backlog of animations because. So it's not that I don't finish projects, it's more so like new ideas just pop into my mind, and I feel the urge to do those things. But really, I do realize that I need to start doing like my smaller animations and working on my smaller projects so then I can grow and develop. This was a pilot I was actually working on. Um so I got a bit too ambitious, and this is the thing that happens whenever I'm doing art is sometimes I'll be too ambitious, and like I'll work on a pilot or I'll work on like this really big animation, and like it'll be good for a while, but then because I got too big for my britches, it ends up taking me longer than it needs to, or it just becomes so detailed of an animation that I never finish it. So that's like a bad habit I have, and I'm definitely working on it and trying to get better at it. So I'm going to turn on my green screen real quick, and I'm going to see what this head looks like. And I'm actually using my fluid brush. Now, the fluid brush is similar to. Uh, Actually, no, it's completely different. I was gonna make a comparison to the blending brush from Photoshop, but really the only similarity between the two is this little icon right here. I would say the fluid brush in Adobe Animate is more so for your final line art, or for, it's really hard to explain, but it has all these different settings like a stabilizer, curve smoothing, roundness, so on and so forth. And basically, it's supposed to give you these nice finalized lines that look more presentable in your animation. And theoretically, what it's supposed to allow you to do as the artist is just have a single pass for whatever line art it is you're doing. And I actually haven't been streaming for a while because I was just doing so much. Like, I had 3 videos I posted back to back, and that just nearly completely burnt me out. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna take a break from like making content in general because I just had 3 videos I posted back to back. But really, how else are you supposed to grow, especially growing your channel, if you're not constantly uploading content? Like, that's really the double-edged sword of this whole journey, and this whole thing is like, if you want to grow, if you want to get big, then you're gonna have to keep posting. But then if you keep posting and don't give time for your other videos to run their course, then you're not gonna grow at all. But then on top of that, you also have to allow for like YouTube to recognize what it is you're doing. It's hard to explain. Just know that I've been at this for maybe 6 years already, and I'm still such a small creator. Really, all I got going for me is my faith, which is not a bad thing. Like, faith is not a bad thing in this whole entire journey, is just keep going. It really is just keep going sometimes, because like You got to have a vision for yourself. You have to have a vision. You have to have a hope for the future, what it is you want to do, what it is you want to achieve, because that is what's going to get you through all of this. And so, what I'm doing is something known as breaking up your animation. That's sort of like the shorthand term to describe it. But I'm essentially only drawing the head and the neck, whereas the rest of the body is going to be on a different layer because it allows for you to focus on things segment by segment. Hmm. Now, I actually have created like animated shorts of this before where this is meant to be like a little loop where the character is walking and then he's supposed to be like inhaling and then exhaling. And I've drawn the head for now, but the hair, the eyes, the nose, mouth, everything else is going to be on a separate layer, even his beard. But this was essentially meant to be like a pilot animation. And it just took me so long that I sort of, it's not that I fell out of love with it, but I just had to like account for what it is I was capable of doing in the moment. So then I don't end up destroying myself or burning myself out. And then this is another layer I was working on. Uh, and this is actually where we have one of the main characters perform like a little illusion magic ability and making this like elephant that sort of goes into the foreground, the front screen, and sort of like shock this character. We then are supposed to have a cut right here to like this rooftop, and this is where we see some of my more proto designs for like my early characters. And so essentially, this is meant to be like the this is meant to be like a teaser or an intro for my animated series because how it starts is the newest member of the Seven Sages. Like he is walking down the street. He's actually very depressed because this dude has a whole backstory where this dude has a whole backstory where he was essentially experimented on and he became like super powerful, but he also became barren. So he couldn't have any more kids. So like his fiance, he ended up like breaking away from his fiance. Like he broke up with her and then he goes on like this depressed walk because like he did all this stuff. Like he went for his promotion, he got experimented on just so he could make more money and just so he could be set up for life so then he could have kids, marry his fiance, live happy and good, yada yada yada. Test results came back, he's barren, he can't have any kids. So like he broke up with his wife and now he's just having like this sad walk down the street. And so he's like walking, and this is where this actual animation takes place and starts. And he's walking. He does like a sharp inhale, exhale because he's depressed. We then go to the next scene where he sees this like kid who's a showman who is an illusionist and he's using his powers to like have this show with like elephants and other flashing lights. And the elephant sort of gets too close to our protagonist here, and he sort of like blocks his face because he's like surprised. And there's meant to be like this flash of light, and then the character, he notices like a sort of flash of light or a glare or something, and he looks at the top of a building, and that's where we see like the seven sages. And the kid who was on the ground floor making the performance is also at the top of this building because, again, his powers are related to illusions. So the whole thing is an illusion. Like the clone, him being on the surface floor, the show, everything is an illusion because they're actually a faction of people who are trying to infiltrate this sort of like office or building. And so that's when the main one of the seven sages, he's sort of like the ringleader and he's looking down onto the street, and then he sort of opens this portal for this scientist character to like go in. And then we go down to scene 4. And that is when he's like looking around and he has his fists raised ready to like fight or anything. And then it sort of like leaves on this little cliffhanger where she appears from the portal and she's like walking into a building. That's sort of the main idea and main concept of this short animation I've been working on. And the intention is to mainly just draw up wonder and intrigue for the overarching project. Because this is just sort of a short animation I've been working on for my pilot. So then my audience and people who tune into my channel know that I have like long term intentions for this project. So now I'm just at the stage of my animation where I really have to like draw the characters. But now that I think about it, this has been pretty long of me to work on. Like it's been quite a while of me just working on this project. And even when I took a break, like I always intended to come back to it. It's just, you know, I'm able to say it. Like I'm someone who, excuse me, I'm someone who, even though I try not to follow fads, sadly, I do try to follow fame. It's something that I'm not proud of, but you only really grow if you're able to admit those sort of like unbecoming aspects of yourself. Is I'm someone who, even though I try not to follow fads because I'm trying to be genuine, I do follow fame because that is one of the only ways I see myself really being successful, is because I do want to start my own animation studio. I do want to be successful. I do eventually want to hire other artists, especially black artists, to make original cartoons, original series, and not just like something that's, dumbed down for kids, but something with complex stories and narratives that really draw people into worlds. Like I want to make a world, a series, a show that has a bunch of lore to it that, makes people feel a type of way. And I've just been finding myself running from project to project to project, trying to figure out, okay, what's going to get me big? What's going to make me pop off? What's going to get a lot of traction coming? Because if I want to be an animator, if I want to blow up, I need to have good animations, and it can't just be good animations. It also has to be something with an overarching story, because really that's sort of the niche, which is usually the route for many animators on YouTube is you either have to have like be a storytime YouTuber, a storytime animator where you tell like stories from your life. Well, my life is pretty boring. Like I don't have any interesting things that happened in my life. Like I have a pretty milk toast life, so I can't be a storytime animator. I can't rely on the craziness and insane things I experienced in my life because for the most part, I've had a pretty normal life, which is definitely a good thing. Like don't feel bad if you were like that awkward kid in school and you didn't really go out much or you didn't really have anything crazy or wild happen in your life. Like there's definitely nothing wrong with that. But what was I saying? Uh don't be ashamed if you have a pretty milk toast life. What else? But what I've realized and what I've learned and understood is that I need social capital. I need interaction. I need someone to know that I exist and that I'm working long term towards this big plan of being a big animator, a big storyteller, because I have the skills. Like if you were to give me like a whole month and some decent funding, I could pop out shows, animations, anything within like just a few days, really. But because that's not how that works, I now have to, I guess, work twice as hard. Or rather, I have to make as much content as possible to get as big as possible or as big as fast. I pressed a button. I think it was like Control G, which was a group, which was a grouping, and that was really bad. Undo group. Yep. But it's like this double-edged sword of do I pump out as much content as possible to get as big as fast as possible? Because like you probably wouldn't believe it if you saw me in real life. You probably wouldn't. You probably say, "Oh, you look good for your age," but like I'm 25 years old. I mean, I look good for 25. Don't get me wrong. Bless God, thank God for my youth. But like, I'm 25 years old, and so I've been rage applying to different jobs, trying to find some sort of industry work. That hasn't been successful. So then, because that hasn't been successful, now I've tried to be on YouTube in tandem with trying to find work. That hasn't really been successful either. So now I've just dropped into this habit of, okay, let me try to post as much as possible, as fast as possible, to sort of like see if that's going to cause an influx of viewers for my content. And even that hasn't been very successful either. So then it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, what haven't I tried yet? That's really what I need to be asking and figuring out is like, what haven't I tried yet? Okay, now it's time to draw the hair. So for this, instead of the fluid brush, I'm actually going to use the regular brush tool. And for this instance, I am in fact going to draw the beard, eyebrows, and the actual hair on their own layers. And then after this, what I'll probably end up doing is actually drawing the eyes and nose as a separate face layer. Because typically when you're breaking up your animation, you sort of want to keep the key aspects or the key features on their own layers, just so it's easier for you as the artist to get through certain benchmarks of the animation. Now, I will say for this, what I probably could have done is actually made the brush a bit thicker, but I can always save that for the next keyframe. Hmm. I'm actually being real quiet right now because I'm sort of in my flow state. I'm in the zone when it comes to drawing. Hmm. I was actually going for like these like mutton chop style like beard. That's sort of what I was going for his character design. And I don't know if I was able to capture it, but he does have sort of like this slicked back hair. That's what I was going for. I do hope I was able to sort of express that in his character design. His character is actually a redhead, so because now I'm curious, like, do I guess Scottish or Irish people like slick back their hair? That's not insensitive, is it? I mean, who knows? Now that I think about it, I probably could have brought his head, I mean, like his eyebrow ridge down a bit more and then pushed his forehead up. But in the moment, I wasn't really thinking. I was just trying to like get the actual motion down. But now, if I were to actually do that, then you see, I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be fine if I just leave it alone. Because really, this is the moment, and these are the times where you, as the animator, will notice the errors you make, or rather, you will notice the times when something doesn't look as good as you want it to. So you sort of have to choose for yourself, okay, what am I going to do now? Like, do I just leave it alone? And I think at this point, the best thing I can do as the artist is ignoring it isn't the proper word. Just try not to overthink too much and take the animation for what it's worth. Hmm. But I do think I am gonna shrink the nose. Like when it comes to like my next stage to like do the face and the facial features, I'm probably gonna like shrink the nose a little bit. I'm just not trying to dedicate too much time on the smaller details. But sometimes working on those smaller details are what makes the animation so good, though. It's just because really what I'm doing, or rather what I'm trying to do, is get through my backlog of animations. And that's really the sad part because I have my YouTube channel on my job resume. And I'm pretty sure whenever I'm going to apply to jobs, they're going to see like my most recent live streams, or at least they're going to listen to the first few minutes of my live streams. So it's like for future employers, I don't want them to see me as someone who can't finish a project. Yet at the same time, like, how do I show and express my skill level when there are just certain things that I'm unable to do on my own? And it's like, is an employer going to take a chance on me and say, like, you know what, for what it's worth, for what this guy does, like, he has potential, let's give him a job? Or are they just going to say, you know what, he's not good enough, so let's just leave him and move on to the next candidate? Sometimes there really is no, excuse me. I've been talking for a while. My throat went freaking dry. What's the proper way to say it? Sometimes things come down to a point where there is no right or wrong. It's just you have to have faith in who you are at the moment. Sometimes all you can really have going for you is your passion and is that vision you see for yourself. But then that passion also has to be backed up by actual work and things you've done and achieved. Because I can say I want to be an animator to the cows come home, but like, how can I be an animator if I don't have a studio? Or rather, how can I get my projects and works out there if I don't even have a place to put my project and work? And then I can say I can be an animator, but can you really be an animator? Can you really be recognized if you don't have any projects or if nobody is looking at your projects? Because you want to make sure that you're producing something that's good, but in the same vein, you don't want to spend forever with not having anything or not having anything up to date on your portfolio website. And really, the only thing I can say is sometimes issues and problems get so interconnected, there is no one way to fix it or make it so everything is right as rain. Not to say that it'll never be right or things will never be okay, but you as an individual and person would have to go through so much, do so much, account for so many things that there are times where you may even feel hopeless. Because then you also fall into things like peer pressure or like circumstance, where people will say, like, oh, we need this, we need that. It's so good that you're doing this niche thing that nobody else seems to be doing. Like, keep at it. And then you're like, okay, well, you told me to keep at it. Like, are you going to help me? Do you know anybody who can put in a good word for me? Are you going to share my work with other people? Because, yeah, I'm thankful for the compliments, but compliments can only take so far. You actually have to have actual tangible action and assistance. Because it just gets to a point where I've just learned to take things people say at face value and be like very scrutinous with what it is I hear as well as what it is I allow myself to take to heart. Because people can be genuine in their compliments. People can have these desires and hopes and dreams, and people can give you that auditory support and accolade, but that's really all it'll amount to is an accolade. Like some people just like or just appreciate the notion and idea of something rather than being that tangible physical assistance that you may need in your endeavor. So you just have to be careful. And that's not to say to don't have hope in anything or anybody, but rather don't let other people get your hopes up. Because you may let other people get your hopes up. There may be someone that says, oh, I want to commission you for this project, or oh, I would love a piece of your art, or oh, I want this, I want that. And then after a few minutes of talking to them, they get cold feet and they're like, I'm just not too sure. And I don't have the money right now where I'm going to check out my options, XYZ, XYZ. And then you're just stuck high and dry. Like, you're like, dang, I thought this was the moment. I thought this was going to be the time where I finally take off. I finally get big. And I finally get that word of mouth that I need, only to be met with someone who may have genuinely had those intentions, but even though you were ready for that leap, they weren't ready for that leap. And again, that's not me saying don't have hope or don't help anybody at all, but there just needs to be some follow through, I guess. People just need to start following through with what it is they preach and what it is they desire. People don't want to follow through anymore. And some people expect change to happen overnight, but they themselves don't want to facilitate that change. And there are people who have the ability and capacity to facilitate the change, but they're not given the platform or the social support they need in order to facilitate that change. It's very sad, and like I said, it's very much a double-edged sword of what can be done, what can I do, what should or shouldn't I do. But in the end, I don't blame the people. Despite the feelings I may have and what I've gone through and what I'm still going through, I do not blame the common people. I mean, I may blame the preachers, not like literal preachers. What I'm saying is, I blame the people who are speaking all the hot smoke with no intentions of actually doing anything. Because, like, the least you can do is, like, get on LinkedIn, okay? Like, the least you can do is get on the internet yourself and I had to clear my throat. Like, if you're saying all this stuff about we need more this, we need more that, the least thing you can do is like get on LinkedIn and find a college graduate. Tell them of a job opportunity you know. Tell them of somebody you know that can like put them on game or give them a job or whatever. Like, that's the least you can do. That's the least that can be done for that person. But don't just like stand there and try to act like you're doing something to help when clearly you're not. Because all in all, that's really what I hate. And that's really what I despise is it definitely feels like YouTube now has like an escapist meta. People aren't people don't actually have hope. They're just talking in circles to make people feel better about themselves. Which is kind of ironic because it could be argued that as an artist, your job is to help people escape or help people feel better about themselves. When in reality, the artist's actual purpose is to be a symbolic chronicler of the times, as well as be a visionary for potential futures. I mean, the whole thing with Star Wars, like when Star Wars came out and people saw lightsabers, there's actually been an uptick of people like designing actual lightsabers. Like, people will go to Home Depot, get like some fiber wire, copper wire, batteries, and like they will try to make their own lightsabers at home. Like, that's an example of like art and creativity being a vision of the future. Even when it comes to cyberpunk, like there was this whole trend on TikTok where this woman, she made her own cyber deck, and now people are getting Raspberry Pis and people are trying to make their own cyber decks, and I'm like, that's actually really cool. Like how people can be inspired by the media they see and by the stuff they indulge in to have these amazing feats of creativity and creation. Like, that's something that is inspiring and something to aspire to. And so I guess really my long-term goal and desire for my art would be to heal people. I think that's a good goal because just the nature of my artistic style and my storytelling style in and of itself is I want to provide people a vision of the future. I want to provide people with something to, I guess, look forward to. That blending of advanced technology and faith is not something in the far flung future, but something that is theoretically, let's say, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It's hard to explain it. Well, I shouldn't say it's hard to explain it. That's like a bad vocal stem I picked up. Hold on, let me finish this little layer right here, and then I can talk about the subject I want to expound upon. Hmm. Okay. So, let me have a bit of an autobiography. I grew up in the church. I remember my grandma taking me downtown to church every weekend, every Sunday. And I liked church. I liked having faith. But in that same vein, I also was really big into anime and video games because there was something about these different stories, like, not really Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball was more like, but okay, well, everybody else was like watching Naruto or Dragon Ball or Sailor Moon, and I did watch some Sailor Moon and some Naruto, I'm not gonna lie. But like my first ever anime I actually really watched like that was Ghost in the Shell. And like, I know, like, I was like a little philosopher, I guess you could say. But essentially, Ghost in the Shell is like this really deep philosophical sort of anime about what it means to be human and concepts like the ship of Theseus and replacing parts of your body. And so what's happening in recent time is there's this really big discussion with older generations about, transhumanism and the mark of the beast and all this other stuff. Whereas me, I'm more so of the mindset of, okay, I don't necessarily believe in like replacing body parts, but we shouldn't avoid discussions. Many older people, and this is prominent in Gen X and late older millennials as well, and even now it's being brought up to Gen Zers where people avoid talking. People avoid having discussions. People avoid wanting to figure things out. And so people are so afraid that they automatically think that merely talking about a subject will cause doubt and make you lose faith, whereas I'm more of the mindset that philosophy is really just open mouth group meditation. Because a big thing about faith is they say you're supposed to meditate on the word, prayer, and meditation. Okay, well, meditation can be done on your own terms, in your own time, by yourself. But you can also talk about and counsel about the word in the presence of other people. And so philosophy, while yes, like the ancient old roots of philosophy is about, trying to disprove God using logic, In that same vein, you can reflect on the world around you through a faith lens as well. Because while science has been used to disprove God, it can also be seen as a tool to record tangible footage and recollections and reflections on the world around you. That's also why art and creativity is important, because it allows for the symbolic recording and reflection on the world around you. And I could have this whole entire diatribe and whole entire dissertation paper on how, because the satanic panic called everything demonic, it really damaged the complex critical thinking and dynamic thought of people who are of faith, to where now they're not even allowed for complex discussions and reflections, because in the end it's not about disproving, it's about gaining a better understanding. But then how are you expecting people to gain a better understanding if you don't take the time to even listen out for the doubts, or have that sort of group meditation of what is actually being said and what do we actually need to do? And that's sort of why it's not necessarily that I separate myself, but even as a child, I've always had this sort of, for a lack of a better word, empathy. I've always had this sort of empathy, or I guess this desire for understanding, where people have said, like, oh, you could be a preacher, you could be this, you could do that. And then I'm like, yeah, I could be a teacher, I could preach to people, but I don't think that's what God wants me to do. Like, I don't think I was made to just teach people. I think I exist to present a controlled environment for open discussion, to where people can reflect on the world around them without the threat of admonishment, while also not having the threat of doubt. Because you only understand if you ask questions, and you only understand if you're willing to be wrong. And people these days are so afraid of being wrong, and people are so afraid of wanting to understand more or wanting to understand better, that they completely write off anything and everything. And it's really sad to see. And I by no means am a perfect person. I will never say or claim I have all the answers, because there are people out here who write books, hide information in books, want people to buy their book or do this, do that. Me, I just want to show people through the art and through the stories I create that there are people going through issues, going through stories, going through their own journeys that they cannot control. And so we should not be giving them feel good messages. Rather, what we should do is just show them that, I see you. So, and really sometimes that's all a person needs is they need to be seen. They need to be known. They need to not feel alone in what it is they're going through. But people have a bad habit of rose tinting the world around them to where, like, if you actually saw some of these people, you would think that they never had a day of hardship in their life. Like, you would think that everything in their entire life was sunshine and rainbows, to where then you have people who are going through stuff, and not saying that people aren't going through stuff, but like you'll see people who are going through stuff and it's like they just get that standard, oh, turn to this Bible page, turn to this verse page, and everything will be all right. And it's like, no, that's not what happens. That's not real. That's not the truth. The truth is that hmm, the truth is that that person probably misstepped 20 different times, and they've already asked God like 30 times before they even prayed to like get them out of this situation, help them through whatever they're going through, admonish their flesh, the whole 9 yards. Like everybody's been through struggle, but they make it out like they just changed overnight or they healed overnight. And people aren't trying to hear that. I know it sounds mean, I know it sounds terrible, but like sometimes people don't need or want to hear your need or want to hear the good. They want to know the bad that's happened. So then they can resonate with that, because not everybody resonates through all the good. Not everybody wants to hear, oh, it's all gonna be good, everything's gonna be okay. Like, yeah, everything's gonna be okay, but like, tell me that you went through what I went through. Tell me that you're struggling like I'm struggling. Tell me that you had these same feelings, these same feelings I had, where I felt abandoned, where I worked hard and ain't nothing happened, and I feel myself going half crazy every single day, every single night. Like, that's what people need to hear. That's what people want to know. People want to not be alone. Okay? People know they're going to get through it. People want to know that they're not alone in feeling what they're feeling. And I know that's kind of bad. That may be something a bit of a doomer mentality, but people just want to know that what they're feeling isn't just them. Because people will talk about Job and seasons and being in your smaller season, and they can give you a proverb or a Bible verse in Ecclesiastics or the book of Job or anything else. But what people need to know is, hey, is what I'm feeling normal? Yes, what you're feeling is normal. Everybody has had that feeling where they're doing everything they know how in their power, and they're still not getting results for their labor. And then, like, because half the time, just that admission of, yes, other people have felt what you're feeling is enough for people. People don't need an escape. People don't want to hear escape all the time. People want to see that what they're going through is valid. And that's why I'm an artist and not some preacher, is because I want to show and depict stories of people going through hardships. I want to bring nuance back to men and women of faith. I want people to express their creativity in a symbolic manner. That is what is important to me. That is what feels to be the calling in my life. to ensure that people know they're not alone. People want to know that they're not alone. And I just get so passionate about it. And I have big ideas, big goals, big dreams and desires that I want to come to fruition because even though yes, I want to be successful, in that same vein, in many ways, I do have a message that I want to share with people. And so I guess rather the vision I have for the reality around me, or rather the long term intentions I have, is to show a world and depict a world in which people are just a little bit kinder to each other. And I don't think that's too hard. Like it's not too hard to be a bit kinder to somebody. Not everybody needs advice all the time. Some people just want to know that they're not alone in what it is they're feeling or dealing with. And sometimes in knowing that you're not alone and in knowing that other people are going through what it is you're going through, that is what helps people keep going. Not just the regular feel good words that everyone says, but you know, I can't help you, but I see you. I was where you were. I experienced what you experienced. Just that human moment and that human feeling of, yeah, I see you. You're not alone in how you feel. I've gone through the same thing. Like no telling someone to be patient, no telling someone they have to do this, do that. Just say, you know what? I feel you. I went through the same thing. And so I could have been a pastor. I could have been someone who just opened my own church and had sermons and was telling the same thing over and over and over again. But no, I want to show people going through hardship. I want to show people in my stories dealing with, I guess, diseases or traumas or bad things that happened in their life. And that's really why this pilot idea, this series has always stuck with me because if this show I made got out, I feel like it would help a lot of people because the core of this series that I'm working on and this story I want to tell is it's about 7 men and women who have been wronged and are seeking revenge. And even though they are seeking revenge, and revenge is a bad thing, it's that human aspect of being done wrong wanting justice and wanting to be seen, wanting it to be known that they are hurting. And so it's these seven men and women who have found community with each other and who are processing what was done to them. Like this character that I'm animating right now, I know I mentioned this earlier in the live stream, but he is barren. He cannot have kids. He can never have kids. And his whole backstory is that he was in the military, and the military offered this experiment that gave him a raise, but he had to like be experimented on. It would make him more powerful, more durable, and he did that. But he only did it because he has this girlfriend. He has this what's the word? I'm blanking. He has this fiance, and he loved this woman so much that like, hey, I want to marry you. I want to have kids. I see my whole entire life with you long term. Like, let's get married. But we don't have the means to survive. So I'm going to take on this experiment. It comes with a lot more money. I can finally marry you. We can finally like get a house somewhere, have kids, yada yada yada. He does that. Then after the experiment, he now can no longer have children. So everything he worked towards, everything he tried, everything he wanted and desired for in life pretty much just went to complete bullcrap and shit. And so now he's very angry, very sad, very aimless. He doesn't know what he's gonna do. Like he's a hurting person. And it's characters like these that I want to resonate with those people who do suffer medical issues, whether they inflicted it upon themselves or not, to where they think that their life is now just a lost cause and they can no longer have any sort of desires or any sort of long term plans or goals in their life. There's another character, her family was like murdered, and she's pained and she's suffering, and she found the seven sages and she became a sage because she wanted revenge for her family that was like killed and taken out of this world, and she's dealing with her own desires for retribution. There's another woman, she was a scientist, and she made all these different leaps and bounds and advancements in technology, and her research notes and her credit was stolen from her. So there's someone running around the world now who wrote himself as the author for all of these achievements that she's made and things that she's achieved, and she's angry and she's upset and she's been wronged. And then there's this other character I'm working on where even though they're not necessarily a victim themselves, they're someone with a lot of high empathy who has always looked for connection. And so even though they've never personally experienced anything bad, they see the unrighteousness and the terrible things in the world around them, and they want justice and they want retribution on behalf of all the injustice that they see in the world. There's another character, one of the youngest members of the Seven Sages, and like that's sort of a play on that I'm doing with his character, where even though he's the youngest, he's actually at like a medium rank. So like he's someone who has a bit of seniority. But essentially, like his parents were these scientists and these very successful men and this very successful like man and woman, but they suffered sort of like a cover up, and now they're pretty much mentally, oop, I dropped my pen, and now they're like mentally destroyed, and he essentially has to take care of his mother and father who now cannot take care of themselves. And he's bitter and he's angry and he's envious of people around him who don't have that same issue as him of like being adultified and parentified. And it's not meant to glorify the wrong that they do, but it's to show that people have legitimate issues in this world, and sometimes we can't just ignore those issues. We can't just skip to the end. But those people need to be helped. And I want to show their stories. I want people to resonate with those stories, and I want people to have discussions of like, yeah, people go through hardships. And it's easy to admonish those people, but like, let's actually take the time to at least ask ourselves, what can we do? What can we achieve? What can we try in our day-to-day life to where even if we don't have the means to set these people up and give them everything, at the very least, we could just make their next day a bit easier and less difficult. And it's like so many different stories and worlds and instances and feelings in my heart and soul exist that need to be captured, need to be drawn, need to be created, need to be depicted. And people should, I'm not trying to say people should read my books or anything like that, but I do feel like people should have the option to engage in the world around them. People should have the ability and the capacity to have a more nuanced and inflexive interaction with the world around them. Because I myself am a person, an individual who I try my best not to compartmentalize my faith. I am an individual who sees the world around me and I look for traces of creation that exist in the world. I think that's the same frame, so I can just cross it up. Okay. I try to make it so that people resonate with the world around them. That's all I want for my art and for the work I make and for all the stories I wish to tell is I wish for people to tangibly resonate with the world around them. And if we somehow manage to do that and be that, then maybe, just maybe, the world can be a bit kinder of a place. And I know I'm not a perfect man. I know I don't have all the answers. I know that things may not go my way all the time. But at the very least, I do have hope and faith that things can be better. And it really is that vision and that aspect of being a visionary that keeps me going, even when I don't have much success in what it is I do or what it is that I create. Because that spiritual core still exists within me. And so I guess that's why I felt urged to not only start this live stream, but also work on this backlogged animation because even if it's not a fight, even if it doesn't have effects, even if it isn't like a big animation where it shows my mastery or skill or something just out of this world that's going to get people through clicks, at the very least, it carries the spirit and soul of why it is that I animate. This was meant to be sort of the, I guess, first scene of my pilot, or rather, at least a very big and like cordial aspect of my pilot where we see one of the main characters meet and establish a relationship with the other characters and someone who's been through a hardship of their own finding likewise people along their journey. You know, now that I think about it, if I were to use Blender or maybe OpenTunes, this would probably be a faster animation process. One of these days, I do have to just open Blender and like learn how to 2D animate with that software. But I've just been using Adobe Animate for so long. Like, it has its own drawbacks. I'm not gonna pretend it doesn't. You know, what I said earlier is probably gonna make like a really good clip. That's really what I built this channel off of, is just like introspection and like having these moments of spiritual reflection and lucidity within my art. Kind of wish I had more people to do that with. I mean, I have my comment section. I have you guys. Like that's really good, but still. Hmm. Let's see here. I think this was the frame that I could copy over. Let's see here. Yeah, it is. It is. That's a little trick you can do. Is like sometimes when you're animating, you can just see where something is looped or see where a frame is being replaced or like inserted in, and then you can just copy the frame or like drag a copy of the frame to that next keyframe so then you can save on time when it comes to animating. But yeah, there's like a lot of little tricks, tips and tricks you can do when you're animating and working on animations. A whole hour and almost 30 minutes of streaming. And I actually got some like really good, that was like some nice introspection I had. I actually don't have much else to say right now. That's usually how these things go. It's like I'll just, I guess, sort of word vomit and like spew out my guts in the first half of the stream. And then when it comes to the second half, or like later on, I don't really have much to say. So like after I draw the eyebrows and hair and like the overall face, I'm then gonna have to draw. Oop, wrong button. I'm then gonna have to draw the jacket, and then afterwards I can draw the body. Yeah, it's really the jacket that sort of like makes the whole figure. There's sort of like this thing you can do as an animator where if it's on top or if it's covered, then you don't really have to account for it as much. Most you'll have to do is probably just draw lines for like where the arms are or where certain segments exist. It's really pretty easy. Not that I think about it, I do have at least two more ideas for videos to make. For one video, what I want to do is I sort of want to make a tutorial on how art is a science using the principles of art and concepts of design. And then I also want to do a video that talks about breaking up your animation and like drawing animation on multiple layers. Because I feel like those two videos would actually do really well. And then after I do those two sort of like tutorial videos, I then might not necessarily take a break from making videos, but more so spend time just finishing up these animations I'm working on. I mean, I do feel like a video going over like how art is very scientific would do pretty well because the thing is that most artists know that a lot of work goes into the actual artistic process. And for people who say like AI is going to replace art, like AI is going to make it easy to commodify art, but AI is not going to replace art. Like AI doesn't understand the intricacy of the concepts of design or line, motion, stuff like that. And like even if you could train AI on that, there's no way for it to easily replicate it because the principles of art are spiritual. And it's a, I guess one could say, living phenomenon and living practice to where it can't be copied. Like you can't like you may can train AI, but you can't really copy the principles of art because they're different per person and they're different per intention. It's like so many different things that are playing with each other and operating off of each other that no two artists uses the principles of art the same way. Now this frame is actually going to be easy because it's just a loop, but I'm kind of going to want to do the body for this one first before I do the head because for the most part the head stays the same. Yeah, head stays the same, but the head does move like up and down and like side to side slightly. So I can actually get away with either using a tween or just using multiple layers. Okay. So next is going to be the face. And I'll just do the. Actually, let me actually zoom out and see this character in full. Because sometimes what happens is. Yeah, I'll do the nose and eyes on one layer. And then I'll do the mouth on its, yeah, on its own layer. So we'll do face. Yeah, I feel like breaking up your animation can definitely be its own like dedicated video. Sorry about that. I was looking at my phone cuz I call it breaking up an animation, but I was actually doing a search on YouTube and people some people call it rigging, but even rigging is its own thing where you turn an entire character into a puppet. But what I'm specifically talking about is like layer separation. So there really are like no videos about like breaking up or separating or layer separation in animation. It's sort of like a thing that gets glossed over. And so many animators almost treat it as automatic that people who are just getting into animation or who don't really understand the animation process, like they'll easily misunderstand it. And that's like a really sad thing because that was definitely something that I sort of had to learn on my own when I was animating. Actually, I do want to do a quick search again to see if layer separation has been talked about, because that would actually be a really good video, like a video on layer separation. Dang, actually, this I may end up having to like re-download this footage because I'm actually just streaming live right now. Like I don't have a backup recorded. But like I may in fact download some B-roll of this because this would actually be a really good moment in time to like this footage right here of me in betweening would be perfect for layer separation. Yeah, there's like legit no videos on layer separation. And it's actually a big thing in like okay, so there are big videos on like rigging, like how to rig and how to like use the puppet tool in animation, but there are no dedicated videos on like actual layer separation. And I'm actually really surprised about that. I mean, I guess because it's almost I want to say intuitive, but still there should be its own dedicated video. Like I'm surprised no one's made that video yet. Is this a sign from God? Is this how I get big? I'm joking.